My hands were trembling when I read the message I sold the house. Get out by Friday. Rebecca's words hit me like a knife straight into my spine. That house wasn't just wood and bricks. It was the last piece of my father I had left. The smell of fresh cut roses in the front yard, the warmth of the kitchen where he taught me to bake cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. All of it was about to be stolen, and by the woman who swore she loved him. I sat there on my old porch swing, feeling the California sunset turn gold against the white walls, and I thought about all the times she called me ungrateful, how she'd push me out of family dinners whispering in my dad's ear that I was too childish to handle adult decisions. But now, she'd crossed a line so deep there was no turning back. And you know what's worse? She didn't even bother hiding her glee. She thought she had finally erased me from the story. But Rebecca never understood one thing my father taught me to fight not with fists, but with patience and strategy. She didn't know about the papers. She didn't know about the hidden letters. She thought she won. But she had no idea what storm was about to hit her. The day she called to say she'd sold the house, I nearly dropped my phone into my iced latte. I sold the house. You have until Friday to pack your pathetic little life and leave. She spat out, her voice almost purring with satisfaction. My heart slammed so hard in my chest, I thought I might pass out right there in my sunny Santa Monica kitchen. That house wasn't just an address, it was the heartbeat of my entire childhood. The dusty oak staircase where I used to race Dad to the top, the tiny attic window where I'd watch 4th of July fireworks. It was all about to be torn from me like an old scab. I felt a cold sweat drip down my spine as I realized Rebecca really believed she'd won. She always did. She married my father 5 years before he died, sweeping into our lives with a sweet southern drawl and perfect banana pudding. Everyone loved her charm except me. Even when I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling she was playing a game none of us could see. Dad used to say, live people always show you who they are if you're patient enough to watch. God, I wished I'd listened better. Rebecca wanted to sell the house to a tech investor from Palo Alto, some guy who planned to gut it and build a gray concrete fortress. That wasn't just an insult, it was a funeral for every memory my father and I had made together. As she bragged about her amazing deal and fresh start, I forced myself to breathe. Slowly, calmly. She had no clue about the trust Dad set up, the secret amendments, the hidden letters. When she hung up, I stood staring at the reflection in the window, my own face pale and shaken, but my eyes hard as steel. I could almost hear Dad's voice whispering, "Not yet, Liv." Wait, Rebecca might have thought she was the final chapter, but she was just the villain in the middle of my story. I took one last look at the sun slipping behind the roofline, letting the rage build coil and settle into something far more dangerous: resolve. I wouldn't just fight for the house, I would fight for every whispered bedtime story, every rose bush we planted, every piece of him she tried to erase. I barely slept that night. I kept hearing her voice echoing in my head. I sold the house, over and over like some sick chant. At dawn, I pulled out a shoebox from under my bed. Inside were all the letters Dad had written to me, each one labeled with my nickname, Liv. Underneath them was the real weapon, a sealed folder marked "In case of emergency." I could almost feel Dad standing behind me, steady and calm, his hand on my shoulder. He always planned 5 steps ahead like a chess master. The folder held the legal transfer documents proving the house was never solely in his name. He had set it up to pass directly to me, no questions, no court fights. Rebecca didn't know. Of course she didn't. She had spent too much time decorating the kitchen with fake marble and hosting charity brunches for her shallow friends to notice the fine print in the paperwork. I drove straight to James' dad's old lawyer and confidant. When he saw me at his office door so early, he didn't even look surprised. "I was expecting you," he said, his voice warm but edged with concern. I dropped the folder on his desk and he glanced through it, nodding slowly. "Your father was brilliant," he whispered, "and he trusted you to see this through." Suddenly, all the suppressed grief rose up like a wave. I remembered Dad's last weeks, him looking frail in his favorite armchair, Rebecca fussing around him with fake tenderness, slipping him his evening tea. That tea. Something had always felt wrong about it. James tapped the folder gently. "Livia, you have the power here, but we have to be careful. Rebecca will fight dirty." I looked out his window, watching the morning traffic crawl along Wilshire Boulevard. A rage as cold as ice slid into my bones. Then let her come. She wants a war, I'll give her one. James nodded, sliding the documents into his safe. We'll handle this our way, quietly, legally. She won't see it coming. As I left his office, I felt something shifting inside me, like a heavy door creaking open after years of being stuck. This wasn't just about saving a house anymore. This was about unmasking a woman who had poisoned my father's final days, who tried to erase me from my own family story. Rebecca wanted me out by Friday, but she had no idea she'd just started the countdown on her own destruction. When I got home, I found Rebecca already there. She was standing in the driveway in her pale pink linen suit, sunglasses perched on her nose like some kind of Hollywood royalty. She didn't even wait for me to park. She stomped toward my car heels, stabbing the concrete like tiny daggers. Get out here right now! She shrieked, her voice high and sharp enough to slice skin. I stepped out slowly, deliberately. Rebecca, you're early, I said, my tone flat, almost bored. She ripped off her sunglasses and threw them onto the hood of my car. Don't you dare act smug with me. I gave you a week to leave and you're still here playing dress up with Daddy's old roses. I could see the veins in her neck bulge in her carefully curated poise, crumbling right in front of me. It was almost beautiful in a tragic sort of way. You know, I said softly, taking a step closer, Dad always said you were good at pretending. She lunged forward and shoved me hard. I stumbled back, catching myself on the rose bushes. The thorns ripped into my arm, but I barely felt it through the rush of adrenaline. Don't you dare bring him into this, she screamed, her breath hot and sour with rage. I was the only one who took care of him when you ran off to your college parties and a selfish little life a neighbor's dog started barking across the street. Somewhere I could hear a screen door slam shut. Rebecca and I were putting on a free show for the whole block. I straightened up, brushing dirt and blood off my arm. Funny, I said, lowering my voice, leaning in so close she had to lean back. Dad knew exactly what you were. Every manipulative text, every sly comment, even the poison in his tea. She froze, her lips parted, eyes wild. What are you talking about? I watched her pupils shrink. You thought you were so careful, but you underestimated me. You underestimated him. Rebecca's hand trembled as she wiped sweat from her forehead. She looked around wildly as if searching for an escape hatch. And then she slapped me. The sound cracked across the garden like a gunshot. I stood still, stunned for a second, before a laugh, low and shaky, bubbled out of me. That's it, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, shaking with a mix of fear and a sick sort of triumph. That's all you've got. She stepped back, her eyes darting between me and the neighbor's windows. She knew she'd gone too far. I felt my heartbeat slow, my breath steady. I had her exactly where I wanted her, and she knew it. I walked past her, ignoring the sting on my cheek and the blood trickling down my arm. I went straight into the house, leaving the front door wide open behind me like a challenge. Rebecca stormed in after me, her heels echoing across the hardwood floors she once wanted to tear out. Don't you dare walk away from me, she shrieked. I didn't answer. I just kept walking through the foyer, past the living room, right into Dad's old study. There, I pulled out the key from my pocket and opened the small oak cabinet he always kept locked. Inside was an envelope thick and heavy. It felt like it hummed with electricity in my hands. My fingers trembled as I tore it open and pulled out a letter in Dad's careful handwriting. I started reading aloud, my voice echoing in the tense silence. Liv, if you're reading this, she's finally shown her true face. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the pain, but I've protected what matters most. Rebecca's face went pale, her lips moving soundlessly. I read on each word, slicing into the air like a blade. Dad described everything, the sudden illness that wasn't so sudden, the mysterious withdrawals from his accounts, the accidents that almost seemed staged, and most chillingly, the tea. He had suspected for months that Rebecca was poisoning him, slowly, carefully enough to make his decline look natural. He pretended not to know so he could protect me and set everything in motion behind her back. Rebecca lunged at me again, grabbing for the letter, but I stepped aside. She stumbled into Dad's old armchair, the same one she used to mock as tacky and outdated. You're lying, she gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks, mascara dripping like ink stains. He loved me. He would never. I shook my head slowly. He loved you enough to let you believe your own lie until it didn't matter anymore. I pulled a small velvet box from the cabinet, the one Dad had told me about in a different letter. Inside was a tiny USB drive. Rebecca's eyes went wide when she saw it. This has everything I said, my voice calm and cold. Recordings, videos, financial records, proof of the poison, conversations with your friends. She clutched the sides of the chair as though the whole world was spinning. You can't do this, she choked out. People will never believe you. I'll ruin you. I bent down my face inches from hers. No, Rebecca, you already ruined yourself. I stood up, towering over her for the first time in my life. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. She curled into herself, sobbing. The queen had finally lost her crown, and I held every piece of her downfall in my hands. As Rebecca sat there shaken, I heard a sudden knock at the front door. We both froze. She looked at me wide-eyed like a deer about to bolt. I turned and walked to the door, opening it to find a tall man in his 60s wearing a worn denim jacket and carrying a battered leather briefcase. Olivia, he asked, his voice soft but strong. Yes, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I'm Samuel, he said, stepping forward. I was your father's friend. We used to work together on restoration projects back in Oregon. He told me to come if things went bad. Rebecca let out a strangled cry behind me. I turned to see her half standing as if she might make a run for it. Samuel stepped into the house, scanning the room, his eyes lingering on Rebecca before returning to me. Your dad knew she might try something drastic. He left a package with me years ago, told me to deliver it only if she crossed a certain line. My breath caught. What's in it? Samuel opened his briefcase, revealing an old manila folder, thick and crinkled. He handed it to me, his hand shaken slightly. Inside were photographs, grainy shots of Rebecca meeting with a strange man at a hotel, slips of paper showing wire transfers to unmarked accounts, and even handwritten notes from Dad, outlining his suspicions about her movements and the sudden spikes in his blood pressure readings. Rebecca stumbled back, her hand covering her mouth. Those are fake. He was paranoid. He stopped. Samuel interrupted sharply. His voice was like a slap in the face. He trusted me to finish what he started. I watched you ruin him in real time. He kept me updated every week. He was too kind, too patient, but he never stopped protecting her. He nodded at me gently. I felt my knees buckle, and Samuel reached out, steadying me. Your dad loved you more than anything, he whispered almost like a prayer. Rebecca let out a raw scream and collapsed into Dad's armchair, again clutching her hair as if she might tear it out. I looked down at the folder in my trembling hands, then at the USB drive. Every shred of her betrayal documented and undeniable. For the first time, she didn't speak. She just sat there, a hollow husk of the woman who once played queen of our world. Samuel turned to me, his eyes kind but steely. It's your move now, Olivia. Do you want to bury her quietly or finish this for good? My mind raced, heart pounding with grief rage and a strange, unexpected clarity. Rebecca had always underestimated me. Now she would find out exactly how wrong she had been. I stood there staring at the folder and the drive, feeling every heartbeat echo in my skull. The room seemed to shrink around me, the dusty shelves, the scent of old books, the light cutting across Dad's favorite chair, where Rebecca now sat like a broken doll. Samuel watched me carefully, as if measuring the weight of my silence. I took a deep breath. She doesn't deserve the quiet exit she wants. I finally said, my voice shaken but firm. Rebecca's head snapped up. Her eyes were red and glassy, but her mouth twisted into a bitter snarl. You're nothing without him. You think you're strong, but you're just a scared little girl hiding behind his memory. I felt something inside me snap, not like a branch, but like a chain breaking free. I stepped forward until I was inches from her. You poisoned him, stole from him, lied to everyone who ever cared about him. And now you want to call me weak. She lunged at me again, but this time I didn't flinch. Samuel moved faster than I expected, grabbing her by the shoulders and pushing her back into the chair with surprising strength for an old man. She shrieked, thrashing like a trapped animal. I'll ruin you. I'll tell everyone you manipulated him, that you forged everything. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit play on a voice memo. Dad's voice filled the room instantly. If Rebecca tries to claim the house, she's lying. I arranged everything to protect Liv. She's the only rightful heir. Rebecca froze mid-scream, her mouth hanging open. The recording played on each word, digging deeper into her last shred of pride. Samuel leaned closer to her ear. "It's over," he said, his voice low and final. She deflated, her whole body curling into itself like a dying flower. Slowly, she looked up at me, her face streaked with tears and rage. "Please, don't do this. We can work something out. I'll leave, I swear. Just don't ruin me." I held up the USB drive between my fingers. "This isn't about ruining you, Rebecca. This is about freeing myself and freeing him." She let out a strangled sob. The once glamorous, untouchable stepmother was gone, replaced by a trembling shadow of a woman who had finally realized she was alone. I turned to Samuel. "It's time." He nodded and reached for his phone to call the authorities and the lawyers. As he stepped aside, I looked around the room, one last time, the framed photos, Dad's favorite mug still on the shelf, the small pile of rose pruning shears. This was my home, my story. And now finally it was safe again. Rebecca started to scream, but her voice felt far away like an echo down a long hallway. I walked past her without another glance. She had always needed an audience. But I wasn't playing her game anymore. I stepped out onto the porch just as the first police car pulled into the driveway, lights flashing in the dusk. The sky above was turning a deep violet, the air thick with the scent of the roses Dad had planted so many summers ago. I stood there clutching the USB drive like a talisman, my breath finally slowing. Samuel joined me, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. Inside, I could hear Rebecca's hysterical sobs, the officers' calm voices trying to steady her. The same woman who once controlled every room she entered now sounded small like a wounded animal in a cage. Neighbors gathered at the edge of their lawns, whispering behind their hands, phones raised to capture what they thought was just another suburban scandal. But this wasn't gossip, this was a reckoning. Samuel glanced at me, his eyes soft but searching. "You okay?" I nodded, though my voice felt trapped in my throat. A female officer stepped outside, her expression professional but sympathetic. "Ms. Matthews," she called. "Yes," I answered, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. "We'll be taking her in for questioning tonight." "Do you want to press formal charges now or wait until the investigation concludes?" I looked past her through the open doorway, where Rebecca was now being led out in handcuffs, her hair wild mascara dripping down her face. She locked eyes with me, no more bravado, no more schemes, just pure raw defeat. I turned back to the officer. "Yes, I want to press charges," I said. "All of them." She nodded firmly. "We'll keep you updated." Rebecca screamed something unintelligible as they guided her into the cruiser. For a brief second, I almost felt a flicker of pity, but then I thought of Dad's hollow eyes in his final weeks, the way he clutched his tea, the way she pretended to soothe him with her soft lies. That pity vanished like smoke. Samuel squeezed my shoulder again. "Your father would be proud," he whispered. I closed my eyes and took a long, deep breath. The weight I'd carried for years, that gnawing guilt and anger, started to slip away. Later that night, I sat in the study, surrounded by Dad's things, the roses visible through the window, softly glowing under the porch light. I pulled out the letter again, tracing the familiar handwriting with my fingers. "Remember, Liv. Strength isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about standing firm when the storm comes." I smiled through my tears, whispering to the empty room, "I did it, Dad. She can't touch us anymore." The house felt alive again, humming with relief as if it had been holding its breath all these years. I walked from room to room, touching the banisters, the worn door frames, the window seats, all the quiet witnesses to my story. This was my inheritance, my battlefield, and my victory. That night, I slept in my old bedroom for the first time in years. I left the windows open so I could hear the wind moving through the rose bushes. Outside, the same roses Dad planted and cared for like they were his own children. I fell asleep to the soft creaks of the house, settling almost like it was exhaling after holding its breath for so long. In my dream, Dad was there sitting on the porch swing, sipping coffee, wearing that old faded baseball cap. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, nodded once, and smiled. When I woke up, I felt stronger than I had in years, like my bones had finally remembered how to stand on their own. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee and carried a mug out to the porch. The sun rose slowly over the garden, lighting up the petals like tiny lanterns. I realized then that the real victory wasn't in destroying Rebecca, it was in reclaiming every inch of this life she tried to erase. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe I'd stay here forever. Maybe I'd turn it into a place where people could come to heal. Or maybe I'd just keep it exactly the same, a living museum to the man who taught me everything about love, patience, and quiet strength. Rebecca's fate was sealed now. The world would know who she really was. But me, I was free. Finally, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you thought you could trust, I hope you remember this. Sometimes the biggest power move isn't yelling or fighting, it's standing your ground with silent, unwavering resolve. And maybe, just maybe, it's tending a rose bush and knowing you've already won before anyone else even realized there was a game. Thank you for being here listening to my story. If it touched you, or if you've got your own story of strength and family secrets, I'd love for you to share it. And if you want to keep walking through these tangled, painful, beautiful corners of family life with me, don't forget to subscribe and join this little circle we're building together. Because sometimes the quietest voices tell the loudest truths, and you deserve to hear them all.